Build, An Unorthodox Guide to Making Things Worth Making, by Tony Fadell. Introduction. Imagine it's 2007. You're in a room with Steve Jobs, just 5 months before he's scheduled to walk on stage and reveal a device that will change the world forever, the very first iPhone. The prototype he's holding has a plastic screen, just like every other phone on the market. But Steve has a problem. He's been carrying it in his pocket with his keys, and the screen is scratched to hell. He looks at his team, a group of the most brilliant engineers on the planet, and says, "I'm not shipping a product that gets scratched. I want a glass screen, and I want it to be perfect." The team is in shock. They're months behind schedule, working around the clock, and what he's asking for seems impossible. The kind of glass he wants doesn't even exist yet. To change the screen now would mean redesigning the entire device from the inside out. It would mean sleepless nights, canceled vacations, and a high-stakes gamble on unproven technology. It would mean betting the future of Apple on a gut feeling. This is the kind of moment that defines a career. It's a moment that defines a product. And it's a moment that the author of our book today, Tony Fadell, lived through not once, but countless times. Tony Fadell is one of the most legendary product inventors of our time. He's often called the father of the iPod. He led the team that created the first 18 generations of the iPod and the first 3 generations of the iPhone. After leaving Apple, he founded Nest Labs and created the Nest Learning Thermostat, a device that reinvented a forgotten corner of our homes and was eventually acquired by Google for over $3 billion. His career has swung wildly between spectacular success and crushing failure. He's worked in tiny, leaky garages and in the gleaming headquarters of the world's biggest tech companies. He's learned his lessons from the very best, including Steve Jobs himself, and from some of the worst bosses you can imagine. And in his book, Build, he's distilled over 30 years of hard-won wisdom into what he calls a mentor in a box. This isn't just another business book filled with theory. It's a raw, honest, and deeply practical guide to making things worth making. Today, we're going to journey through his incredible story. By the end of our conversation, you will understand the unorthodox principles that have guided some of the most iconic products of the 21st century. You'll learn how to spot a great idea, how to build a team that can achieve the impossible, and most importantly, how to build yourself into the kind of person who can change the world. This is the playbook for anyone who wants to create something meaningful. Let's begin. Book summary. So, where does a story like Tony Fadell's begin? It doesn't start with the gleaming white iPod or the revolutionary iPhone. It starts, as all great stories do, with failure. Spectacular, soul-crushing failure. Before he ever set foot in Apple, a young Tony Fadell landed his dream job at a company that was destined to change the world. It was called General Magic. This was the early 1990s, and the company was a secret, star-studded startup filled with the very heroes who had built the original Macintosh computer. Their vision was breathtakingly ahead of its time, to build a handheld device that was a phone, a computer, and an entertainment system all in one, essentially, the iPhone, but in 1989. Fadell was all in. He and the team worked non-stop, sleeping in the office for nights on end, fueled by Diet Coke and the absolute certainty that they were building the future. They were myopic, heads down, focused only on their own part of the puzzle. As Fadell explains, most young people starting their careers are like this. You're so focused on the details of your own work, the code you're writing, the design you're perfecting, that you don't look up and you don't look around. You trust that the leaders, your heroes, have the big picture figured out. But at General Magic, nobody had it figured out. After years of delays and tens of millions of dollars invested, they finally launched their product. It was a technical marvel. And it sold maybe 5,000 units, mostly to friends and family. The company, and Fadell's dream imploded. It was a brutal gut punch. But in the ashes of that failure, he found the single most important lesson of his career, a mantra he returns to again and again throughout the book: do, fail, learn. He realized that adulthood isn't the time when learning ends, it's the time when real learning begins. School teaches you to fear failure. You take a test, you get a grade, and that's it. But in the real world, failure is the only way you truly learn, especially when you're trying to create something the world has never seen before. Your 20s, he says, are not about finding a straight line to success. They are about following your curiosity, not a business school playbook. Assume the companies you join will fail. Assume your brilliant ideas will go up in flames. The only real failure in your 20s is inaction. The rest is just trial and error. This is the first part of building. You have to build yourself. And that starts with choosing the right job. Fadell's advice here is simple but profound. Don't ask how much money can I make. Ask, what do I want to learn? He advises young people to find a company that isn't just making a better version of something that already exists. Find one that's starting a revolution. Look for a company solving a real pain point that a lot of people experience every single day. The best ideas, he writes, are painkillers, not vitamins. Vitamins are nice to have, but you can forget to take them for a month and not notice. A painkiller solves a throbbing, persistent problem you can't ignore. That's why General Magic failed. They were building a vitamin. In the early 90s, nobody felt the pain of not having a computer in their pocket. But Palm, their competitor, solved a real pain. People were tired of carrying around messy address books. Palm created a digital Rolodex you could put in your pocket. It was a simple painkiller, and it won. This leads to the next crucial step in building your career: managing. Fadell is brutally honest about this. Becoming a manager is a discipline, a learned skill, not a talent. And the moment you become one, you stop doing the very thing that made you successful in the first place. If you were a great coder, you're no longer coding. You're now responsible for human beings. Your job becomes communication, hiring, firing, budgets, and endless meetings. Many people fall into the trap of becoming a micromanager. They were promoted because they were the best accountant on the team, so now they try to be the best accountant on the team, dictating every step to their employees. This, Fadell says, is a disaster. Your job as a manager is to care about the outcome, not the step-by-step process. Steve Jobs would inspect individual pixels on a screen with a jeweler's loupe to ensure the quality was perfect. That wasn't micromanagement, that was being exacting about the final product. Micromanagement is when you dictate how the team should design that pixel. This brings us to one of the most important crossroads in any project: the battle between data and opinion. When you're making something brand new, there is no data to tell you if you're right. You can run all the focus groups you want, but as Fadell learned at Philips, customer panels can't design for you. People are more comfortable with what they already know, even if it's terrible. This leads to what he calls analysis paralysis, where a team gets so scared of making the wrong choice that they make no choice at all, endlessly testing until the project dies. The first version of any product, what he calls V1, is an adventure into the unknown, and it must be driven by vision and opinion. This is where the story of the iPhone keyboard comes in. The data was clear. Everyone loved the physical keyboard of the BlackBerry. Fadell himself was deeply skeptical that a touchscreen keyboard could ever feel good. The marketing team was terrified it wouldn't sell. But Steve Jobs had a vision. A hardware keyboard was rigid. It locked you into one language, one layout. It ate up half the screen real estate, making it useless for watching videos. His vision was for a magical sheet of glass that could become anything you wanted it to be. It was an opinion-driven decision, and he told the team, either get on board right now or you're off the team. But vision alone isn't enough. Sometimes, even Steve Jobs got it wrong. The original vision for the iPod was that it would be a secret weapon to sell more Macintosh computers. It would only work with Macs. The first generation launched, and the critics loved it, but it didn't sell well. Why? Because almost nobody owned a Mac. The team went to Steve and said the second version, V2, had to work with Windows PCs. Steve refused. Absolutely not. It would defeat the whole purpose. But this was no longer a V1 product. They weren't flying blind anymore. They had data from real customers. For a V2 product, data and customer insights have to come first, and the original vision has to take a backseat. After a huge internal battle, Steve reluctantly agreed to make the iPod compatible with PCs. And sales exploded. It was making the iPod work for everyone that saved Apple. And ironically, millions of happy iPod customers eventually got curious and bought Mac computers, fulfilling Steve's original vision, just not in the way he expected. This is the essence of building a great product. You start with a strong, opinion-driven vision for V1. Then, for V2 and V3, you listen to your customers, study the data, and refine, refine, refine. It's a cycle he calls the 3 generations. Generation 1 is about finding product-market fit. You're essentially shipping a prototype to innovators and early adopters who are forgiving of bugs. You'll likely lose money. Generation 2 is about fixing what you screwed up in V1 and reaching the early majority of customers. This is where you might start to make a small profit on each unit sold, reaching what's called gross margins. Generation 3 is where you optimize the business. You've refined the product, and now you focus on lowering costs, expanding sales channels, and finally making the entire business profitable. It took the iPod 3 years and 3 generations to become truly profitable. The iPhone followed the same path. But what is the product, really? This is where Fadell offers one of his most powerful insights. The product isn't just the object in the box. It's the entire customer journey. He tells the story of the Nest thermostat. The team was obsessed with the physical device, the design, the feel of the dial, the electronics. But Fadell realized that the device itself was only 10% of the customer's experience. 70% of their interaction would be with the app on their phone. The other parts of the journey, the website, the advertising, the packaging, the installation, were just as critical. If any single link in that chain was weak, the whole experience would fall apart. To make this intangible journey tangible, he says you have to prototype the whole thing. For Nest, this process started with the box. The physical limitations of the packaging forced them to be ruthless in prioritizing their message. What was the single most important thing a customer needed to know? What was the second? Every word on that box became the foundation for their website, their ads, and their interviews. This process led to one of their most brilliant and beloved innovations, the Nest screwdriver. During user testing, they found that installing the thermostat took people about an hour. But when they dug into the data, they realized the actual installation only took 20 minutes. The other 40 minutes were spent rummaging through junk drawers, looking for the right tool. Most companies would have just put 20-minute installation on the box and called it a day. But Nest wanted the first moment with their product to be joyful, not frustrating. So, they included a custom-designed, beautiful little screwdriver in every box. This turned a moment of pain into a moment of delight. But it did more than that. The screwdriver became a marketing tool. It lived in people's kitchen drawers for years, a constant, subtle reminder of the thoughtful brand that created it. It was a tiny detail, but it told the entire story of the company. We care about every step of your experience. And that story is everything. Fadell learned the art of storytelling from Steve Jobs, who never just presented a product, he presented a narrative. Before telling you what the iPhone was, he spent 10 minutes telling you why you needed it, reminding you of all the ways your current smartphone wasn't so smart. Fadell calls this planting the virus of doubt. You get people annoyed about the way things are now, so they're primed and excited for your solution. A great product story does three things. It appeals to both rational and emotional sides, it makes complicated ideas simple, and it always focuses on the why. The famous tagline, 1,000 songs in your pocket, wasn't just a feature list, it was a story. It used an analogy to give customers superpowers, a way to instantly grasp a complex idea, and, more importantly, a way to repeat that story to their friends. This philosophy of building, driven by story, focused on the customer journey, and refined over generations, is what guides a product to success. But what about the business itself? Here, Fadell shares his journey of founding Nest. The idea for a smart thermostat didn't strike him like a bolt of lightning. It chased him for 10 years. It started as a personal pain point. His ski cabin was always freezing when his family arrived on Friday nights. He tinkered with solutions for years, but the technology wasn't ready. The idea would go away, but it always came back, following him around the world until he finally realized he was the one who had to solve it. A great idea, he says, follows you around. Even after you discover how impossibly hard it will be to execute, you can't stop thinking about it. This is what he calls delayed intuition. Before you leap, you must take months, or even years, to research, plan, and see if the idea has the strength to survive your own skepticism. Once you commit, the first step is building your team. He says you should know the first 5 people you're going to hire before you even start. And your early team should be anchored by what he calls seed crystals, people so talented and well-respected that they naturally attract other great people. As the company grows, it will inevitably hit what he calls breakpoints. These are predictable moments when the way your team communicates and organizes simply breaks down. The first happens around 15 people, when informal communication is no longer enough. The next is around 50, when you need managers of managers. Then again around 120, when you need formal directors and processes. The key is to anticipate these breaks and restructure before they happen, preparing your team for the changes to come. This leads to his final, and perhaps most dramatic, set of lessons: what it means to be CEO. The climax of Fadell's story is the acquisition of Nest by Google. On paper, it was a perfect marriage. Nest had the brand, the product, and the vision for the connected home. Google had the resources, the AI, and the infrastructure to accelerate that vision years into the future. But from day one, there was a massive culture clash. Fadell describes Nest as a team of fighters, forged in the near-death culture of Apple. They were scrappy, mission-driven, and used to top-down leadership where the CEO could drop bombs to clear roadblocks. Google, on the other hand, was a culture of abundance, funded by the money tree of its search and advertising business. It was less hierarchical, and leadership couldn't just command teams to help. They had to be persuaded. The two companies, Fadell realized, were speaking completely different languages. Then, just over a year after the acquisition, Google announced a massive corporate restructuring, creating the parent company Alphabet. Nest was suddenly spun out of Google, cut off from the very resources it had been promised. The deal they had signed up for was gone. The marriage was over. Fadell was told to slash his team and his roadmap in half. Then, he was told Google wanted to sell the company entirely. It was a brutal, agonizing experience. Fadell eventually resigned, unable to lead a company whose vision was being dismantled from above. He uses this story to illustrate the immense weight and isolation of being a CEO. Your job, he says, is simply to care. To care about everything. To inspect the support articles with the same intensity as the product design. Your passion, or lack thereof, trickles down and sets the standard for the entire company. He divides CEOs into two types: babysitters and parents. Babysitter CEOs are stewards. They maintain the status quo, avoid risks, and keep shareholders happy. Most public company CEOs are babysitters. Parent CEOs, on the other hand, push the company to grow and evolve. They take big risks. They challenge their teams to strive for greatness, even when it's painful. This is the kind of CEO Fadell urges us to be. But no one can be CEO forever. The final chapter of leadership is knowing when to let go, when to unbecome a CEO. Whether it's because the company has outgrown you, or you've lost your passion, or you simply need to make room for the next generation of leaders to rise. In the end, he says, two things matter: products and people. The things you build define your career. The people you build them with define your life. Even when the product fails, even when the company dies, the relationships remain. The lessons learned, the bonds forged in the fires of creation, that is what endures. Commentary. As we reach the end of Tony Fadell's journey, it's clear that Build is more than just a business manual. It's a deeply human story about the messy, beautiful, and often painful process of creation. The most powerful lesson, for me, isn't about technology or marketing funnels, it's about persistence in the face of failure. Fadell's narrative isn't a highlight reel of successes. It's a scrapbook of scars, each one a reminder of a lesson learned the hard way. His mantra, do, fail, learn, is so simple, yet it's the bedrock of every great achievement. In a world that often celebrates overnight success and worships flawless resumes, his honesty is a breath of fresh air. He gives us permission to be imperfect, to try things that might not work, and to see failure not as an endpoint, but as the tuition we pay for wisdom. The concept of prototyping the entire customer journey is another idea that stays with you long after you finish the book. We often get so focused on the thing we're making, the app, the report, the piece of art, that we forget the experience surrounding it. The story of the Nest screwdriver is a perfect, tangible reminder that the small, thoughtful details are often what create a lasting emotional connection. It challenges us to look beyond our own narrow focus and see the world through our customers' eyes, at every single touchpoint. And finally, his distinction between babysitter CEOs and parent CEOs is a powerful framework for leadership at any level. It's not just for executives. Are we simply maintaining the status quo in our own lives and projects, or are we pushing ourselves and those around us to grow, to evolve, to strive for something better? It's a call to embrace the discomfort of growth over the safety of stagnation. So, how can you apply these ideas to your own life, starting today? Here are a few simple actions inspired by the book. First, practice fighting habituation. For the next week, find one small daily annoyance that you usually ignore. It could be the way your backpack is organized, a frustrating step in your morning routine, or a confusing feature in an app you use. Instead of just accepting it, ask yourself Fadell's favorite question: why? Why is it this way? How could it be just 1% better? This simple exercise will start to train your mind to see the world not as it is, but as it could be. Second, for your next project, whether it's for school or a personal passion, start by writing the press release first. Before you do any work, write one paragraph that explains what it is, who it's for, and why anyone should care. This will force you to clarify your vision from the outset and give you a North Star to guide you when you get lost in the details. And third, think about your own customer journey. If you're applying for a college or a job, don't just focus on the final product, your application or your resume. Think about the entire experience from the perspective of the admissions officer or the hiring manager. How will they first hear about you? What will they see when they look you up online? How will you follow up after an interview? Every interaction is a chance to tell a thoughtful, cohesive story. That was a summary of Build by Tony Fadell. We've journeyed through some of the biggest ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the major cities and highways, but it can't convey the feeling of walking through a bustling market, the taste of the local food, or the wisdom you gain from talking to the people who live there. The real magic of this book is in the details, the personal anecdotes, the raw honesty, and the countless small lessons packed into every page. If any of the stories or principles we discussed today sparked something in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning business strategy. It's an experience that can fundamentally change how you approach your work, your career, and your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that this work matters to you, and ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep building and learning together.